So have you ever played The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge? What are your thoughts on it? I got a couple other videos on my channel like this one with plenty more on the way. So I sat down and played through the Family Guy video game for the first time, and as a big Family Guy fan, I gotta say, it was mostly ass. The original cast voiced the characters here, and the game was released on PS2, PSP, and Xbox during the 5th season of the series, so arguably when Family Guy was at its peak.
Hi.
But while the show was doing great, this game wasn't. It got pretty bad reviews all around, and I definitely understand why. Sales must have been pretty good though, because they eventually made another game, but we'll talk about that some other time. The game cuts back and forth between Peter, Stewie, and Brian, with each one having their own story and gameplay style. And yes, there are cutaways in the game because it wouldn't be Family Guy without them.
Oh, they're setting up cutaways.
Alright, let's just start with Brian so we can get him out of the way because his levels are easily the worst and have pretty much nothing to do with the other two. Brian gets arrested when Carter accuses him of getting his racing dog Seabreeze pregnant again. And yeah, the animation for the cutscenes is usually pretty bad. I wasn't expecting them to be the same quality animation as the show, of course, but damn. A lot of the movements were so choppy and it really just felt cheap. At least The Simpsons didn't cheap out with theirs. Anyway, Brian escapes from jail by sneaking past a bunch of inmates, and officers while collecting clues to help him figure out who actually impregnated Seabreeze. And he'll go from location to location and do the exact same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, the game in general can be pretty repetitive, but Brian's levels were ridiculous. I'm down for stealth missions, but when all you're able to do is walk or crawl around a room and you have to do it 5 billion times, it really starts to wear on you. Occasionally you'll wear a disguise or have to fight Brian's urge to pee, grind, or drink, so I guess that's something, but I kinda hated every time we came back to Brian's story. There were a few things in there that mixed it up a bit, like when you save this kid, or towards the end when you serve hot dogs and kind of compete in a dog race. But yeah, that wasn't enough to save it. So Brian eventually clears his name and finds out who actually impregnated the dog. Yeah, it was Quagmire.
Glenn Quagmire.
What?
Next, we'll talk about Stewie's story, which is my favorite of the three and actually where the game starts. After a quick cutscene showing Peter watching Mr. Belvedere on TV in the garage, that'll come into play later. Stewie plans to use Peter's TV satellite dish to send out commands from his mind control device and take over the world. When suddenly, Stewie's half-brother Bertram shows up threatening to steal the dish. Whatever happened to Bertram? Like, I know they killed him, but I'm surprised that after close to 15 years later, they still haven't brought him back. Anyway, Stewie will have to get to the roof and stop Bertram, but first, you'll have to collect weapon power-ups to upgrade your ray gun. You'll find these power-ups throughout the game and they'll unlock new abilities for your ray gun, which will give you new ways to kill a bunch of kids. It's really cool being able to explore the Griffin house and see Easter eggs like the evil monkey in Chris's closet. Once downstairs, you'll mind control Lois and have her scare Brian outside with the vacuum so that you can follow behind him. You'll use your mind control a few other times in the game on characters like Quagmire and Death, but we'll get to that soon. Once outside, you'll vaporize a bunch of children, bring down a helicopter, and have your first cutaway. The cutaways are little mini games and they'll give you a bonus if you can complete them. Brian will become invisible for a short time to help with his boring ass sneaking. Peter's food meter will fill, which might make no sense right now, but you'll see soon. And Stewie gets more power-ups. The cutaways aren't ever too hard and it's a fun way to help break up the repetitiveness of the gameplay. Use the skyhook to propel up to the rooftops and use your balloons to glide across. Stewie destroys the dish to prevent Bertram from getting it, but it turns out that was exactly what Bertram wanted so that he can pursue his own plan for world domination. Bertram gets away and the dish falls on Peter's head, who is immediately rushed to the hospital. Stewie will have to get into Bertram's lair and figure out what his plan is. Only issue, his lair is inside Peter's balls, so Stewie will have to shrink down and get inside Peter.
Gross.
Cut to the hospital and Stewie will have to get to Peter before death can. Here, you'll do a lot. You'll kill a bunch of orderlies and evil nurses, avoid lasers and use reflective walls, and avoid electrocution by jumping on people. You're also going to jump on pregnant women so that they can shoot out missiles and clear a path for you, or just because. And collect machine components, one of which you'll get by controlling Quagmire and making him scare women away so they'll get hit by lasers and you won't have to. Slide around in fat, which really just looks like chocolate milk, and help find the parts to repair the liposuction machine so the guy will open the door for you to move on. Get through the morgue, and then there will be a Galaga type battle with waves of enemies. I grew up playing Galaga on Namco Museum on the PS2, and there's a few more of these later, so I was actually enjoying whenever one of them came up. This isn't related at all, but I would also play Dig Dug, and that was my shit growing up. I love Dig Dug. Anyway, control death to get the nurses out of your way, and by get out of your way, I of course mean to kill them. Then, you'll celebrate with a sexy party. Now you can shrink down and get into Peter's body. Avoid the acid in Peter's stomach and slide through an artery to get to the lungs. Climb your way up, then slide again to get into the brain, where you'll fight what feels like an endless amount of Loises. Not gonna lie, I died a few times. The game isn't challenging often, but almost every time that it was because there were a million fucking enemies to kill. Oh my god. But after that, you play a football kind of thing, and that somehow makes the blood flow go to Peter's testicles, which you can now make your way down to. Slide and fight your way down to the bladder, and the bladder is pretty much exactly the same as the stomach, just with pee instead of stomach acid. Follow a sperm trooper, and yes, that's actually what they're called, and once you get to the testicles, there's another Galaga type level, but this time you also have to avoid landmines. Then continue killing sperm troopers as you deactivate the lasers using the reflective walls. When you get past them, you realize Bertram isn't there, but he left his book behind. You use what you read in the book to find Bertram's new lair, which is in Quahog and not inside Peter. Wait, so you're wondering when Stewie got out of Peter? Alright, well that's a long story. Okay, I guess it wasn't that long. And if you're wondering why Peter looked like he was dressed like he might be a sex worker, that's because he was. But we'll get there later. Try to find a way to get into Bertram's lair using mind control, but that isn't working, so screw it. When you get in, there's this cool flying section, then you'll have to destroy some cloning machines and slide through slime, jumping gaps, and passing through sensors to open doors. After that are more lasers and reflective walls where you have to fight a bunch of enemies. Yes, once again, there is more of something we've already seen multiple times before. I am not exaggerating when I tell you this game is so repetitive, especially for Peter and Brian. Mainly Brian. Then this part was even worse than the Loises from earlier. These kids in the daycare or whatever the hell this is supposed to be just would not stop coming. Fight, slide, and avoid traps as you make your way through the lair until you find Bertram.
A slow clap? Really?
Bertram has put Rupert into a satellite that he's going to launch so he can take control of the world. Avoid the obstacles and free Rupert while destroying the satellite. Now it's time to take out Bertram for good. But never mind, because you guys schedule a fight for a bit later at the playground. Fight Bertram at the playground, first in the Galaga type level, then when he uses a device to make himself huge.
Who's the big baby now, bitch?
Shoot his legs, then use the skyhook to shoot his face from higher ground. In the sandbox, destroy the device on his ray gun so he'll shrink down to regular size. But he manages to escape when he calls for his mom. I think Stewie will be fine though.
Draw a hot bath and spend some quality time with my thoughts. No, you can't watch. I'll leave the door cracked.
Stewie definitely had the best story, and his levels are more similar to a regular 3D platformer, which is what I was expecting going in, and I just wish the rest of the game could have been more like this. But oh well. Remember when Stewie shrunk down and went into Peter? Well, Peter woke up at that same time and saw a spotlight in the sky of Mr. Belvedere. And he jumps to the conclusion that Mr. Belvedere has kidnapped his family and is trying to kill him by sending brainwashed henchmen after him. Set out to get your family back and beat up literally every single person you see all across town in a classic beat 'em up style of gameplay. But don't punch God though, because he'll just zap you to death and you'll have to start over. You'll also collect food that you come across that will fill a meter that allows you to use special attacks. You'll fight various mascots and quick time battles. And of course, there's the cutaways. There's a memorization game where you have to copy a sequence of farts to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So that was cool. Peter tracks Belvedere to Cheesy Charlie's but gets hit by a door and he's black now? Okay, well, yeah. Now you'll continue beating everyone up, but as Rufus Griffin, basically a parody of Shaft. Eventually you'll drop down to a hellish version of Cheesy Charlie's, where you'll cross snake pits on the skeletons of children that you just dropped to their death, and then drop down a hell or some shit to fight a bunch of floating Belvedere heads, but you get hit in your head again and realize you were hallucinating. Now you'll have to go to the casino to continue your pursuit, but only after a quick game. When Peter arrives at the casino, a sex worker lands on him, so naturally, Peter turns into a sex worker. Duh. Fight your way through the casino and take a bathroom break before you continue. And now we're at the point I showed earlier where Stewie left Peter's body. See, I told you it would all come together, just stick with me. Continue through the casino and you'll face Gandhi, notorious for his love of hot dogs, in a hot dog eating competition, and then you'll fight Phineas and Barnaby. Get hit in the head, returning to normal again, and go to the docks. A bunch of random shit falls on Peter, and he turns into... well, I guess I'll just let him tell you.
I am an automaton nuclear neo-human android. You may call me Anna.
It's more of the same, just in a different location, except you do fight some seals, and there is this little mini game or whatever you want to call it, where you avoid swordfish and catch the beer. That was pretty fun. Fight along the beach, then fight the Black Knight in a boss battle, who was voiced by Will Ferrell in the show, but not here.
Too busy hanging out on your island to record one line for some video game?
The knight's helmet falls on Peter's head and he snaps out of it for the last time when Lois shows up and tells him it was all in his head and that he beat those people for no reason. So naturally, Peter goes to the bar to drink. At the Drunken Clam, it's revealed Mr. Belvedere was real, I guess? I don't know. The reveal didn't really make any sense to me, but it was actually the giant chicken in disguise. And finally, the whole game I was wondering where he was, and I started to think he just wasn't in it, so I was pretty excited. It's a classic chicken fight. You beat the shit out of each other going from location to location, having to complete quick time events to go to those different locations. And I was having a lot of fun with this until he started doing that slap attack, which was overpowered as fuck for some reason, and the last two quick time events were insane. Your timing had to be perfect, and it was always random, so that was pretty annoying. That last location, though, was rigged with bombs, so you beat him, jump out of the building, but it's okay because you land on Meg. The whole family reunites and you see the Belvedere spotlight was real, but it was just Mayor West, and in the background you see the giant chicken survived. So that was the Family Guy video game. Overall, I'd say it's a mixed bag at best, because there were some things that I really liked in here, but other things that I just loathed. I enjoyed a lot of the humor, including some of the little things in the background like the signs or the mimes by the invisible walls. And as a Family Guy fan, there were plenty of Easter eggs and callbacks to things from the show, and just being in the world was pretty cool. But with the extremely repetitive gameplay, and in the case of Brian's levels, often boring, this game was just kind of a drag to get through. Yeah, there were cutaways and sometimes they throw new stuff at you to mix it up, but it wasn't nearly enough. I'm still new to making videos, so I've only ever talked about 3 other games so far, 2 of them based off IP, and for those, I recommended them for fans of the franchise for sure, and believe that even people that weren't necessarily fans would also be able to get some enjoyment out of them, but for this one, I don't think anyone will enjoy this from beginning to end. I know people that grew up with it love it, so all I would say is don't revisit it because it'll definitely ruin it for you. Hopefully when I give the next one a shot though, I'll feel a bit differently. Hope the glare's not bad, can you see that? So if you've ever played it, what did you think? And please subscribe to join me as I talk about things like movies, video games, TV, and much more. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Yeah, I got a train to catch.